Hello, young Star Trek fans. Got another new book for you here today. This is another choose your own adventure type book. It's the last one we're doing. And it's called Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, The Vulcan Treasure. So let's, as always, let's see how quick this ends or how long it lasts. Oh my, okay. Prologue. The civil war on Vulcan was going badly. The forces of illogic were slowly but surely besting the armies of logic. It had been a long war, the latest in a series of conflicts that had torn apart the social and governmental structure of that bleak and distant world. Barat, the last commander of the last regiments of the defending forces, sat dusty and alone in his littered bunker. Even through the thick walls, he could hear the sizzling of the air from the beams and the thump of explosions. There was little time left, yet Barrett knew that the other side, their brothers and sons and fathers, were in almost the same position of depletion and weariness. I'll go to the next page. Almost, thought Barrett. That tiny difference, almost. In this case, almost was enough to win. No one wins a war, the bemeddled general thought. Death wins, illogic wins, famine wins. An officer entered the bunker, his dark uniform torn. "Sir!" Wearily the old general looked up. How young he is. "Sobak, I have a mission and I want you to volunteer for it." "Yes, sir, of course." In a few hours, Surak himself will be taking a peace team to the other side. We must find a solution or this war will wipe Vulcans from the face of the planet. Sobak nodded. It was the only logical conclusion. "I want you to find 4 good soldiers. I have assigned a small combat starship to you, the Latroska. There are 3 containers in Bunker 290. You are to take them off-planet and hide them." "Yes, sir. To whom do I reveal the location? Or do I, sir?" "Only, and I repeat only, to the Supreme Vulcan. You will use the mind touch to eliminate the memory from your companions. Do you understand?" Now let's just turn to the next page. "Yes, sir. Is it permitted that I know the contents of the containers?" "Yes, but only so that their concealment will be satisfactory. You understand that upon your return, if you return, and if there is anything to return to, the memory will be wiped from your mind too." "Yes, sir." "Good. I picked you because I knew your father. I fought beside your mother at Elafor, and Surak has approved your selection." Sobak stood just a trifle straighter. "What you will be carrying are the crown jewels of Vulcan." The tiniest flicker of expression crossed Sobak's face. The crown jewels were a treasure of incalculable value. In addition to the ancient crown of Mutara, there were the 2 crowns of Metor, the 7 orbs of Sulatam, the bars of precious metals bearing the seals of every Vulcan king. There were pearls from the semi-intelligent mollusks of the green seas, carved plaques of ivorium, faceted jewels from a dozen worlds, and tribute to Vulcan by alien races that had come down through time. There were the radiant, mind-faceted crimson diamonds from Vulcana, sculptured and bejeweled relics from ages past, and star emeralds torn from the heart of the fire moon's Tur el-Botar. Turn to the next page. Oh, we haven't had much choice in any of this so far, have we? "I understand," Sobak said. "They are not to fall into the hands of the opposition, or anyone else for that matter. If Surak is successful, the wars shall end, and a new era will dawn. Our successors can decide what to do. If we are not successful, the treasure will simply have disappeared." Barat stood and shook Sobak's hand. The lean young Vulcan carefully kept his face expressionless, but the gesture from the general was without precedent. Barat watched the screen as the Latoska lifted under a barrage of protective fire. It got away, and the readout screen told him when the ship had passed into warp speed and was undetectable, and therefore safe. On another screen, Surak was boarding a vessel that was already transmitting the radio spectrum of the neutrality signal. It was a fateful moment in Vulcan history. A very long time later, Barrett thought about the young officer he had sent into space and who had never come back. He and his crew and ship had vanished. That the Vulcans had simply gone away and used the treasure for their own pleasure never entered his mind. Sobek was a logical Vulcan from a prominent family, one for whom honor was of the highest priority. But what had happened? Where was the treasure? Surak's ideas and philosophies had won out, but the reconstruction was difficult and long. Barrett forgot the lost treasure. There was too much to do. The USS Enterprise was passing near the Novak system, a G-type star with 9 planets. In the control room, Yeoman Thagard handed an electropad to the captain seated in his control chair. Admiral James T. Kirk took the thick, flat device and thumbed the control. He studied the form on the screen and scrawled a signature across the rectangle reserved for his approval. A second push and another requisition appeared, one for trimeladrazamine, requested by Dr. Leonard McCoy. This was followed by 2 requests for leaves at the next Starfleet base, 1 application for maternity leave, 6 for further schooling in molecular electronics, and 1 for Starfleet Academy. Boy, this just goes on and on. Kirk shook his head. More time spent with administration than with exploration, he thought moodily. Decisions backed up until only I can decide. What was that ancient Terran leader's comment? The credit entry stops here, sir. Never mind, Yeoman, here you are. Captain Kirk, O'Hara said from her communication station. I'm picking up some unusual signals on Channel D. She pressed her fingertip to the communication device on her left ear. I can't make them out. Computer, Kirk said. Tell me about this system. Novak system registered stardate 1412.7 by Federation Starship Alfred North Whitehead, Captain Gerald Novak commanding. It had not been explored, and the commanding officer took privileges of rank to name the star after his family and the planets after members of that family. It is a standard G-type star which... Tell me about the outermost planet in the system, Kirk interrupted. The 9th planet is Cathy, a gas world approximating Jupiter of the Sol system, or Griffin of the McCarthy system. There are 3 moons of significant size, Abigail, Charlotte, and Gerald. All 3 have atmospheres 0.8 of Terran norm and gravities 0.7 to 0.9 of Earth's. Inhabitants? Kirk inquired. None known, the computer stated. Kirk out. Mr. Spock? Captain, may I request an investigation? Kirk raised his eyebrows, for Spock's request was unusual. Explain. I have identified the signals, sir. They are in ancient Vulcanese, pre-war, and in the standard battle code of the time. Kirk's eyebrows ascended farther. Request granted. Mr. Sulu, go to impulse engines and compute a parking orbit around... He looked at Spock. The moons are now equidistant in various orbits around the primary world. The nearest will do, Captain. The nearest, Mr. Sulu. Good Lord, when will I get to even make a choice? Oh, my. Well, anyway. That will be Abigail, sir. Sulu's deft fingers picked at buttons. Excuse me, Mr. Spock, Chekhov said, but you said battle code? The Vulcans have not had a military force since the wars that united your planet. That is correct, Mr. Chekhov, Spock said with his eyes at the screen magnifier. These signals are either false or from a very old source. Orbit achieved, Captain, Sulu reported. Very good, Mr. Sulu. Mr. Spock, is there any sign of habitation? None, sir. May I offer a suggestion, Captain? Kirk made a gesture of acceptance as Spock unbent from his viewer. A landing party at each of the moons. Granted. Mr. Spock, Uhura informed Starfleet. He thumbed an armrest control. Mr. Scott, report to the bridge. Dr. McCoy, Dr. Chappell, Dr. Weinstein, report to the bridge. Lieutenant Collins. Yes, sir. Lieutenant, prepare 3 security teams for beaming down. Full combat armor. You will command 1 team and select the other 2 commanders. He turned to look at Chekhov. Mr. Chekhov, you have not been down for some time. Would you like to take one of the parties? Yes, sir, Chekhov said at once. Very well, then. Let's go see these ancient Vulcans, or whatever they are, Kirk said. The 3 teams assembled in 3 different transporter rooms. In room 1, Kirk, Dr. Chappell, and Lieutenant Nakashima had gathered with Sergeant Aragones and 2 security personnel, Barry St. John and Marta Bergstresser. In room 2, Spock had gathered together his team, Dr. Weinstein, Engineer Montgomery Scott, and Workman, Wagner, and Mendoza from security. In the third transporter room, Chekhov was nervously checking over his team. He was outranked by Dr. McCoy, but traditionally medical personnel do not assume command of such missions. Pat Bradley, a young engineer, was part of the team, as well as Lieutenant Tom Collins and security people Rick Randall and Maud Fox. Ready? Kirk asked. His team was to go down to Charlotte, Chekhov's to the more distant moon called Gerald, and Mr. Spock would take the task of exploring Abigail. Turn to page 10. We finally get to make a choice. Each of the team commanders reported their readiness. From the cargo transporter room, an officer reported that combat assault craft would arrive seconds before each of them. Good luck, Kirk said to all. Ready to energize. He felt that familiar thrill go through him, the lure of the unknown, the hot challenge of the unexpected. Strictly speaking, he was too high in rank to be leading first contact teams anywhere. But being an admiral and the captain of the most decorated ship in Starfleet did have its privileges. Energize. The figures on the transporter discs sparkled and faded and were gone. All right. Okay, we can go exploring with Captain Kirk, we can go with Spock, or we can go with Chekhov. I think I'm going to go with Spock. So we turn to page 12. Let's follow Spock. Abigail was the largest of the three moons, nearly Earth-size, and the huge globe of Cathay loomed across most of the sky as Spock and his team beamed down. The combat carrier was already there, and they all climbed in, tasting the pungent air of the moon. It was spring on the rapidly turning satellite. Pale green grass, yellow plants, spiky orange bushes, and flowers the size of a thumbnail were everywhere. Bobby Wagner, one of the security troops, smiled as she put a bouquet of the tiny white flowers to her nose. Sergio, she said to her companion, security man Mendoza, these are just lovely. He grunted, his eyes suspicious as they scanned the nearby landscape. You're never going to learn, are you? New planet, new dangers. Keep your eyes open. The carrier stopped near where Spock's tricorder said the radio signals originated. There seemed to be nothing, an expanse of rolling prairie, grass, a few mounds, a rustle of wind across the flatland. Then Montgomery Spock pointed. There, Mr. Spock, there. Okay. Spock and his landing party investigate, or the landing party disappears. Well, let's investigate. There was a glint of a sliver of metal along one of the mounds. Spock sent Sergeant Workman to investigate, and the burly, bearded security man reported it was the edge of some kind of door, half buried in the grassy mound. Spock ordered everyone out. The door resisted, but finally gave after being uncovered and pried open. Steps led down into darkness. Lights, ordered the lean Vulcan commander. Spock flipped open his communicator and reported to the Enterprise that they were descending. Phasers in hand and strong light beams probing the dark, Spock led his team down into the moon. Walls are concrete, made from local materials, observed Scotty. Dry, cool, and unremarkable. Mr. Scott, you've noticed that the passage is of human proportions, Dr. Weinstein said. Not wide enough, such as a Tramora might have made, nor tall and thin like the Scarnaflin. Aye, and a hiss from Sergio Mendoza in the lead stopped all whispered conversation. Okay, we can go to a door and spiraling passages or a strange crate. Let's check out the crate first. So that's page 24. This could be it. Who knows? This could be the end. You never know with these books. A room, reported Mendoza. There was a room ahead, dark but sending back glints and reflections from their lights. The team approached cautiously with Spock in the lead. He stopped at the entrance to the chamber and examined it carefully. It was plain, roughly finished concrete. In the center sat a huge metal crate of antique design. There was nothing else. Spock circled the crate at a distance, examining it, keeping the rest of the group back. Then he came closer and finally pressed a finger into a depression on the lid. The crate popped open with a hiss, and he levered it fully open and looked in. At the bottom were several sacks of jewels sitting amid the dust of some ancient hide container. There were several gold bars, a silvery statue of some animal, and a sphere of transfixed water. Without touching anything, Spock gave an order. Mr. Scott, would you link your tricorder with mine? Scott made an adjustment, and they both looked at the readout screen as Spock aimed his tricorder at the floor. Ah, he said with satisfaction. Okay, go to page 32 or 95. Hey, let's just warp all the way to 95. What the heck? I mean, it doesn't really give you much of a choice. It's like this or that. Spock moved his linked tricorder into the interior of the crate. He raised his eyebrows and reached down to touch one of the jewels, an unexceptional gem among many fine ones. At the moment he took it into his hand, he froze. There was a glowing starting in his clenched fist, which transfixed him, flowing over his body until the Enterprise crewman could not see him at all. The glowing became a ball of pulsating light, which drifted slowly away from the ancient crate, growing ever brighter until the humans had to turn their faces away or shield their eyes with their arms. Welcome, Vulcans. The voices in their heads, booming, powerful. You have succeeded. Return these objects to Vulcan. It is your duty. Live long and prosper. The voice stopped. The ball of light drifted and faded, leaving an ashen Spock swaying on his feet. But he recovered quickly and stood straight and impassive again. We have succeeded, Spock said, and now we have work to do. Okay, 116. Lord, is it the last page? About. Yep. Epilogue. Spock stared at the heaps and mounds of the Vulcan treasure. Randall, Wagner, and Fox were helping Chekhov carefully sort all the boxes and containers, the jewels and strange objects of art and all the rest. Sulu entered the cargo bay and gasped. Great suns, Mr. Spock. Yes, Mr. Sulu, it is a fantastic sight. All that wealth! The chief helmsman turned to Captain Kirk, standing nearby. Sir, what is this worth? Nothing, smiled Kirk, and everything. Ask Mr. Spock. What is the value of this, Mr. Spock? Spock took a long time in answering. He looked at Uhura, trying on a cascading array of a crimson diamond necklace. What is the value of anything, Mr. Sulu? To a man dying of thirst, a cup of water is worth more than this. What is the value of a child to its mother? How important is information? It all depends on the circumstances, Mr. Sulu. Spock was silent, and Sulu thought he was finished. Then the Saturnine Vulcan spoke again. There is wealth here, yes, Mr. Sulu. Wealth in the conventional sense. But there's symbolic wealth, too. Until now, all this was legend. We have found things here whose value is incalculable. There are objects from the myths of a species. How would you value the throne of Zeus, or a chair fashioned by Jesus? What would the Holy Grail go for on the auction block? Excalibur, the tablets brought down from Mount Sinai. Spock stared at the treasure for another long moment. How much would someone pay for the secret of life? To know the hour of your death, the future of intelligent life, what the next hour holds? Yes, Mr. Sulu, it is a treasure, but there is no way to logically estimate its value. They fell silent and watched the people work. You've set the course to Vulcan? Kirk asked Sulu, who nodded. Aye, aye, sir. An expression flickered across Spock's face. Home, he thought. The end. All right, well, that lasted quite a bit just because we didn't have to make many choices, but it ended well. It did. It had a good ending. All right, well, that's about all I got. I'll see you next time. Daddy Star Trek, signing off.